Hello, Internet. Josiah here.
And also the disembodied voice of Craig once again.
Yes, disembodied together again. This time we're going through red. If you've stuck with us through the rest of the colors, we appreciate it. Thank you for stopping by for this one as well.
Yeah, I mean, you know the drill by now. He's going to talk about standard. I'm going to talk about limited.
Yeah, give us a like if you like this kind of thing, so that way we know for future sets. We've got a little bit of feedback. We'd like a little bit more, so
yeah,
tell us what
really
you like, tell us what
it.
you don't like, so we can improve it. So anyway, you went first last time. My turn to go first this time.
Yeah, get started up.
A Kaum Hellhound. For 1 red, you get a 0/1 elemental dog creature at common with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, a Kaum Hellhound gets +2/+2 until the end of turn. This is probably going to be ran in a lot of red deck wins. Might possibly make it into the Boros dog deck. So I think it's going to see some play. It is a lot of the time a 1 mana 2/3. If you draw this late game, you're not very happy, even if you are in red deck wins, because it doesn't have haste. It doesn't really do a whole lot on your opponent's turn. So yeah, I'll give this a solid C.
And in limited, it's a 1 mana 0/1 a lot of the time, especially in the late game. Landfall for +2/+2 is a good stat boost, but it's not going to matter most of the time. This thing gets outclassed like as early as turn 3. Like they play their 3 mana 2/3, and now this thing can't even attack after you play a land. Like just don't play this card, man. Honestly, I want to say it's a straight up F, but in the most aggressive red decks, you might want more 1-drops. But even then, if you can probably find something better, I'm gonna go on ahead and say it's an F.
Right.
Go for the gusto. Next up, Ardent Electromancer. For 2 in a red, you get a 3/2 human wizard at common that says when Ardent Electromancer enters the battlefield, add a red for each creature in your party.
This is quite interesting that it's in red. It's an aggressively statted mana dork. Sometimes. I mean, it always gets you one red mana, so it's really a 2 mana 3/2. And the 2 mana 3/2 is pretty good, especially in an aggressive deck. In the party deck, this is going to pay for another party member some of the time, and that's pretty good as well. It's also got some relevant creature tags, so you know I think this is another C tier card at common.
In limited, a 3 mana 3/2 that refunds you 1 mana is all right. Oftentimes, you're not going to be able to do much with the extra mana, but if you can put it to use, it's going to be very good. And if you can get this to give you back 2 or 3, now you're in business. You're talking about potentially double spelling on turns where you have no business doing that, and that's really cool. It only adds red mana, though, so be careful about that. Otherwise, this is a fine card. You're going to play it a lot. I'll talk about this once for the whole thing. If it has a party member tag, like Wizard, Cleric, Rogue, Warrior, it's better. But I'm not going to mention that for every single card. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. You're going to play it, and you're going to mostly like it. So C.
Yeah, I'm also not going to talk about those creature tags as well. I might just make an offhanded comment like I just did. Just saying that it's relevant. Not exactly explaining what it is, just because there's going to be a lot of cards that will apply to. We'll make the video a little bit less lengthy. Next, we have Cinderclasm. For 1 in a red, you get an uncommon instant with kicker, 1 red. Cinderclasm deals 1 damage to each creature. If it was kicked, it deals 2 damage to each creature instead. I like this card. A red board clear sometimes. It's pretty good. I don't think, unless you're up against like a token deck, you're not really going to play this for 2 a whole lot. You're almost always going to play this for 3. And at 3, dealing 2 to everything is pretty fair. Pretty good. The double red might affect you depending on what deck you're playing, but most of the time it really doesn't. You really don't care about that just because there's so many good mana fixings in standard right now. I think, again, we're on a common trend right now. I'm gonna give this a C.
In limited, this card's fine. It's not amazing. And the problem is it's in red. And a lot of times, if you're playing red, you're playing an aggressive deck. You're playing a lot of X2s. So it's going to kill your stuff a lot of the time. If you can set it up to where your deck has more X3s and stuff, you're going to be in really good shape. It's not as good as Pyroclasm, which is 2 mana to deal 2 to everything. But this one's at instant speed, so that makes a big difference. At instant speed, it's actually pretty solid. As long as it doesn't kill all your stuff, you're going to be in good shape. It's a C if you can set your deck up to not kill your stuff.
Okay.
Next up, Cleansing Wildfire. For 1 and a red, you get a common sorcery that reads Destroy Target Land. Its controller may search their library for a basic land, put it into the battlefield tapped, then shuffle their library and draw a card.
I don't like this card at all. I mean, it is removal for some of the castles, so that should be stated. It does also cantrips itself, so it's not horrible. But I mean, I don't really know what deck will want to run this. And I don't think any of those lands are going to be such a huge hindrance that you have to run this to destroy them. This could be for future sets where they have some crazy animator lands like Craig was saying before. But yeah, I think this is... I'm going to go with an F tier card. I don't think you'll play this card.
And in limited, you actually might play this a little bit more often. It draws itself, so it cantrips, so that's good. It's going to be useful in the blue-red spells matter deck to replace itself and get your triggers. It's also a source of red mana fixing, because you can destroy your own land and search up that splash that you've got, which red doesn't usually get a lot of, so it's very exciting. You're still not going to run it unless you have something you really want to fix, or you're in that blue-red spells deck, and this is probably the worst card in that deck. But if you need the fixing, it'll be good. Otherwise, it's a D. But if you need the fixing, it can be a C.
I mean, if you play it on turn 2, that's not that bad. But outside of that, I don't really know when you would.
I think I'd rather just be playing creatures, man.
Yeah, actually, because it's just bad.
Yeah.
All right, we've got it's my turn, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Expedition Champion for 2 and a red. You get a 2/3 human warrior at common. With Expedition Champion gets +2/+0 as long as you control another warrior. So it's a 3 mana 4/3 sometimes. And when it is a 3 mana 4/3, it's a vanilla one. So I think this card is pretty bad. It's an F tier.
In limited, that's a little different. A 3 mana 4/3 in limited's really aggressively statted. You're gonna be turning this thing sideways a lot, especially if you end up in the red-white warrior deck, which is red-white's archetype, aggressive warrior, turn them sideways, attack face. You're gonna want to play this card. You're probably gonna play a couple copies of it if you can get your hands on them. That said, it's not amazing, but it's fine. It'll make your cut more often than it doesn't. It's a C.
Yeah, when I drafted that deck, I drafted as many of them as I could find.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Next up, Fireblade Charger. For 1 red mana, you get a 1/1 Goblin Warrior at uncommon, and it says as long as Fireblade Charger is equipped, it has haste. When Fireblade Charger dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target.
I don't know. It's a 1/1 that gets haste on turn 2 sometimes. Just because of Mind Carver, I guess.
Now in the late game, you cast it and then equip something you had laying around to it.
I mean, even no, I don't know. I think this is a bad card for the current meta. I mean, the secondary ability is pretty good, especially if it has an equipment already attached to it, but there's no real combos to play this early enough for the haste to be like super important, I guess. I'm going to give it a D tier just because I might see some play, but I doubt it.
In limited, this card's great. A 1-mana 1/1 is fine, and the fact that it has upside, it's a Goblin Arsonist without anything to it, and there's plenty of equipment floating around that you'll be able to soup this bad boy up more often than not. And if you attack with it and it has something like 3 attack, all of a sudden it's lightning bolting your opponent when it dies, or it's killing a creature. This thing can 2-for-1 your opponent really, really, really easily, and it's going to make them think twice a lot. If you're playing an aggressive red deck, you're going to be first picking this in some weaker packs. This is a B.
Yeah, I still think it's. I don't know. I think people are gonna try to make it work. I still stick with my D. So.
I don't play enough standard to evaluate it. So
we've got Fissure Wizard. For 1 in a red, you get a 2/1 Goblin Wizard at common. When Fissure Wizard enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. It's gonna see some play in the Wizard deck for sure. I think just because it's cheaply costed, it lets you draw a card. I think this is another D tier card. No, I don't think that it really breaks the game in any way, but it's okay.
In limited, it's a pretty similar story. You get a 2-mana 2/1 with a reasonable ability. And a reasonable tagline as well. The tagline alone for this one might actually push it over the top, which is why I mentioned it. It's a wizard. It goes in that deck specifically. And if you are playing that deck, you're going to want to toss your excess lands and get extra cards and cast wizard spells. In any other deck, this card kind of sucks. They're just better 2-drops. And a 2-mana 2/1 with some text is honestly not good enough these days in limited. It's a C in the wizard deck. Otherwise, it's a D, and you probably want to cut it. Next up, Goma Fada Vanguard. For 1 in a red, you get a 2/2 human warrior at uncommon. Says whenever Goma Fada Vanguard attacks, target creature an opponent controls with power less than or equal to the number of warriors you control can't block this turn.
Yeah. This card is 100% going to get ran in the warrior deck. Might even excuse me. Might even make it into just some regular red deck wins as well. It's good. I mean, it's a solid card. I think that this is going to see quite a bit of play, so I'll get a B rating.
Yeah, and in limited, this card's going to be okay. It's not going to be quite as good as everyone thinks it's going to be. Just because it does require you to have a board full of warriors specifically, which it might not be super difficult to do. It also has to stick around and get to attack. So it's going to be a little harder than you want. I don't know. It's not all that hyped up to be. It's going to be fine, and you're probably not cutting it in the red-white warrior deck. It's a C.
We've got a Grotag Bugcatcher. For 1 in a red, you get a 1/2 Goblin Warrior with Trample, and whenever Grotag Bugcatcher, attacks, it gets +1/+0 until the end of turn for each creature in your party. I don't think it's very good. A 2-mana 2/2 with Trample. Some of the time. And gets bigger some of the time. It's I don't know. I'm not a fan of this card. I think that this is probably a D tier card. It might see some fringe play, but probably not.
In limited, this card's fine. It's a 2-mana. While it's attacking, it's a 2-mana 2/2 with Trample, and Trample is some serious upside. If you manage to get this guy to attack for 3 or 4, you're in business. Not to mention, slap some equipment on it, and you've got a 2-mana Trampler that you can give all your swords to. And that's going to put some serious pressure on your opponents. This guy's going to trade up and deal damage to the face a lot of the time. And that's some serious business. All on a common card. You're going to be picking this one. You're going to be playing him, and he's going to do you some good. It's a C. Next up, Grotag Night Runner. For 2 in a red, you get a 2/3 Goblin Rogue at uncommon. Whenever Grotag Night Runner deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn.
Okay. It's not horrible. It has to get through for its effect to go off, but you know, it's free card draw on the turns that it does. I think it's a decent card. I don't know if red is going to be included in the rogue deck that people are going to be playing, but if it is, then this card might see some play. It's a D tier card for me.
In limited, this card's okay. 3 mana for a 2/3 is fine. If you can sneak it in for some damage, you're going to be pretty happy about that pseudo card draw. And in the late game, if your opponent are neck and neck and this pushes you over the edge, it could run away with some games, especially if you've got some ways to give it some evasion. But it's not. It has to connect to your opponent, and that's really difficult to do sometimes. I give it a C.
Inordinate Rage. It's 1 in a red for a common instant with target creature gets +3/+2 until the end of turn. Scry 1. It's kind of like Infuriate. I wouldn't say it's worse than Infuriate, but it's a more expensive Infuriate with an additional effect. Infuriate sees a lot of play for that burst damage. And some red deck wins to give them a little bit of reach. Yeah, I think this card is going to see some play. I don't think it's insane or anything, but I think it's good, just good enough. I'll give it a C.
And in the limited format, 2 mana for +3/+2 just is not what you want. Tacking on Scry 1 makes it a little bit better, but it doesn't really push it over the edge. It can make your creature win combat sometimes, but a lot of times you want to play a card like this just to push through some damage, and 2 mana is just too much to do it. I think you're cutting this more often than you're playing it. It's a D. Next up, Kargan Intimidator. For 1 in a red, you get a 3/1 human warrior at rare that says cowards can't block warriors. And pay 1 and choose one of the following that has not been chosen yet this turn. Those selections are Kargan Intimidator gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Target creature becomes a coward until end of turn. And target warrior gains trample until end of turn.
So it's a mana sink. It does a lot of things. It's got its own little rule there. Cowards can't block warriors. But they can block other things. So you're going to want to use that ability in a warrior deck, and I think this card makes the warrior deck every time. That, and if you say a 2 mana 3/1 with any one of those abilities is pretty good. And a lot of the time you're going to play this on turn 2, and then on turn 3 you're going to sink all your mana into this and, you know, make it a 4/2. Make something a coward, and then hit him in the face. And if they do block, you can always give them trample. So, and it can be done at instant speed, so you can break it up into any phases you want to do it in. I think this card is pretty great. A tier.
In limited, this guy is also fantastic. 2 mana for a 3/1's really aggressively statted. The only thing holding him back is he's only got 1 toughness, but that shouldn't be a huge deal because you can give him another additional toughness for just the low price of 1 mana. It's going to help you get your warriors through, and the fact that it gives all of your other warriors trample as well, one at any one of them at any moment, is actually really good upside. So he can come down and immediately make stuff not be able to block, and give your guys trample. That's really good. If you play this early on and your opponent doesn't have an answer to it, you're probably going to win the game. But he's not always going to win you the game, so he's not quite a bomb, but you're still first picking him, so B.
Leyline. Next up is Leyline Tyrant. It's a 2 and 2 red for a 4/4 dragon creature at Mythic Rare. It's got flying, and you don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. And when Leyline Tyrant dies, you may pay any amount of red. When you do, it deals that much damage to any target.
Wow.
This card is insane. Insane. They're going to make combo decks with this card. And they're going to sacrifice their own Leyline Tyrant and deal 20 damage to your face in one turn. It's going to happen. People are going to do it. I'm kind of excited for it. I think this card it's a 4/4 with flying. Historically, that's pretty good. And it's only at 4 mana for this pretty crazy ability. So yeah, I think this card is a A tier, borderline S tier card. It's going to shape the meta, I think. So it's very good.
Yeah, I mean, and in limited, it's a 4 mana 4/4 flyer is already great. Tack on this crazy ability, and if you ever get to untap with a Leyline Tyrant, you're probably winning the game. Not only do you get to hit them for 4 in the air, but you get to keep all that mana stored up and get ready to send it to them. It can kill a creature if you need it to, but most of the time you're going to try to finish your opponent off with this. This is an S tier red card in limited. You're going to win most games you untap with it. It's insane. So good.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Next up, Magmatic Channeler. For 1 and a red, you get a 1/3 human wizard at rare. It says as long as there are 4 or more instant and or sorcery cards in your graveyard, Magmatic Channeler gets +3/+1. You can also tap it and discard a card to exile the top 2 cards of your library, then choose one of them. You can play that card this turn.
So it fuels itself with the discard mechanic, kind of, because you can discard an instant or sorcery to fuel it, but it also exiles 1 card forever. And the other one you can play if you want to. Turn 2, it's a 1/3 that has this effect. Might help you dig a little bit. Any later in the game, it's always a 2 mana 4/4. And that's pretty good. I think this card is going to see quite a bit of play, especially in any Is It deck. So I'm going to give this another A tier.
And in limited, a 2 mana 1/3 is no joke. It'll stick around for a while. It's kind of tough to remove. Eventually, this is going to be a 4/4 as long as you've got your deck built for it, which you will when you take this card. And it's interesting because things that, usually something that would make you discard a card and give you card selection off the top is good. In this set, it's actually less good because discarding your lands is slightly less valuable, your extra lands, because of the landfall triggers you might be wanting to get. But generally speaking, you're going to want to use the discard ability to get card selection in the late game because some of the stuff you draw is just not going to be useful. All in all, this is a fantastic package and one you're going to be picking incredibly highly. It's an easy B, not quite a bomb by itself, but very great B.
Next up, it's Molten Blast. For 2 and a red, you get a common instant with choose 1. Molten Blast deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker, or destroy target artifact. I want to say that this card's going to see a little bit of play, just for artifact hate. But I don't really think it's going to see a lot of play. I don't really like everything I like that it's flexible, but the first mode isn't that good. Except for the fact that you can deal damage to a planeswalker, I suppose. I'm gonna give this a D tier.
Yeah, I mean, three mana for 2 damage is obviously not a great deal, but when you bundle it with also destroy target artifact, this now becomes removal for creatures and planeswalkers and artifacts as well. It's artifact hate that you can mainboard and not feel too bad about. and 3 mana to deal 2 damage. There's a lot of 3 mana 3/2s running around in this format. I could totally see you being able to trade evenly with this a lot of the time. Yeah, I think you're going to be picking these pretty highly, and if you're already in red in packs 2 or 3, you might even first pick this sometimes. I mean, I'd play 3 copies of this in my draft deck or more easily. It's a B. Next up, Morog, Fury of Akum. For 4 and red, you get a 6/6 legendary Minotaur Warrior at Mythic Rare. It reads, each creature you control gets +1/+0 for each time it has attacked this turn. It has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. What?
This card is insane.
That's so good.
So he always gets them to. He always gets them to. It doesn't specify which main phase, 1 or 2.
Doesn't matter.
No, I suppose it doesn't. But it could specify, and it doesn't. So if it says, if it's your first main phase, that would make a difference.
It would, yeah.
Because then you couldn't repeat this, but you can repeat this. If you can play more than 1 mana, more than 1 land, more than 2 lands, you could save up all 4 of your Fabled Passages. Pop them one right after the other, get a landfall, and attack 4 times in a row. And that might be the combo. I don't know. But this card is insane. It's got a 6/6. It's a 6/6 and gets bigger. I don't really think realistically you'll get more than 4 landfalls in a single phase with this guy. But even 1 is super, super strong, especially with a fully developed board. But without 1, it's still good. Getting to attack with a 6/6 multiple times, unless it's against an Uro, is pretty good. Any of the giants, this thing's not really going to be able to attack more than 1 time. I don't know. I think it's pretty. I think it's really good. I think it's insane for the combo potential. I'm gonna give this card an S because it's probably broken.
In limited, this is a super bomb. It's great. The fact that it does something when you play it, each creature gets +1/+0 for each time it's attacked. You don't have to be attacking with this guy to do it, so you can slap him down, and then it makes your combat better already. Not to mention, you can slap him down and then play a land. Again, he doesn't have to be attacking. He just has to exist. You slap him down, play a land, and then all of a sudden now your whole team gets to go twice. Man, that's really, really good. Without a board, he's significantly worse. So that is something to be said. He's still a 6 mana 6/6, a 7/6 when he attacks. So that's still really good. I think the fact that you do need some dudes with him holds him back from being an S tier. But he's still an A++, man. What a guy.
Oh, he's just insane.
It's super good.
Next up, we've got Nahiri's Lithoforming. For X and 2 red, you get a rare sorcery. Sacrifice X lands. For each land, sacrifice this way and draw a card. You may play X additional lands this turn. Lands you control enter the battlefield tapped this turn. The last line is there to prevent comboing. Infinitely dealing a bunch of damage to yourself. But this card has some combo potential in some decks where, I don't know, you want to play Morag Fury of Akum with a bunch of red mana that doesn't carry over, that doesn't decay. And then nuke all your lands and refill your entire board with lands again. It's pretty good. Pretty good. I don't know that you play this all. It doesn't just fit into any red deck either. It fits into very specific combo decks. I'm gonna say it's gonna definitely see play for all those silly red mages out there. I think that this is probably a B tier, maybe an A tier. Just because when you get this thing to do this effect in the way that you want it to, it's going to probably win you the game.
Yeah, in limited, this card kind of sucks. Generally speaking, you don't want to kill your lands just to draw cards, and it's kind of expensive to do it. In the super late game, after you've played a bunch of lands and maybe you've got like 9 or so in play, and you can afford to kill 4 of them, great. But it takes a lot of setup to get this card to work, and I think that's going to hold it back. I don't think it's totally unplayable, but I think you cut it a lot of the time. I don't really know that it fills a particular role very well. I mean, I say this, and then I'm going to get absolutely annihilated by landfall triggers sometime with it, but I just think it's too hard to set up. It's a D. I'm not going to be taking it highly.
No, I mean, in limited, it's going to be very difficult to make full use of this card. Yeah. But in standard, man, bad boy is going to do some crazy shit. And you know, when I if I lose to a Nahiri's lithoforming deck, I'm not going to be mad about it. You know what I mean? like I'm like, good for you, dude. You set that up and it works. I'm happy to die to it.
Oh, goodness. Next up is Pyroclastic Hellion. For 4 to red, you get a 4/5 Hellion at common. It says when Pyroclastic Hellion enters the battlefield, you may return a land you control to its owner's hand. When you do, Pyroclastic Hellion deals 2 damage to each opponent.
It's a 5-mana 4/5 that has an interesting effect. It's a common, and I think a lot of that has to do with it costing 5. I don't know. I think this card is okay. I think it helps with landfall decks. I think it, landfall trigger plus, I guess, because the landfall trigger itself is pretty good most of the time. I guess this is a D tier card because you might fit it into some decks. You might not. I don't know.
In limited, this card's going to be pretty good, especially in the red-green deck that cares mostly about landfall. The fact that it lets you reset your landfall triggers and it just shocks your opponent in the face for no reason. Sure, why not? Paying 5 mana for a 4/5 is a reasonable rate, and it's probably going to be the biggest thing on the field. So yeah, I don't see anything wrong with this. You're interested in the first copy of it a lot of the time. Any more than that, we might be pushing it, but probably playing it. It's a C.
Next we have Relic Robber. For 2 and a red, you get a 2/2 rare Goblin Rogue with haste. And whenever Relic Robber deals combat damage to a player, that player creates a 0/1 colorless Goblin construct artifact creature token. That's right, you heard me. I said creates a 0/1 colorless Goblin construct artifact creature token. It's a lot of words. With this creature can't block, and at the beginning of your upkeep, this creature deals 1 damage to you. So this card does a lot of things.
Yes,
cool. Yeah, it is. When it deals combat damage to a player, that's the part that is pretty relevant with this. It has to get through. So you're trying to set this card up to get through as much as possible. So you're killing off things that can block it. You want them to get as many of these little 0/1 creature guys as possible. Reddit was all crazy about this card when it came out, and I think it's weird thing for me to say, but I think for a red card, it's too slow. Even with haste. If it said when it attacks, this card is insane. But it has to hit makes it really slow. So I'm gonna still give this a B, and because I think that it's going to get more play than it probably deserves. But yeah, B tier.
Yeah, and I think this little guy's pretty good. A 3-mana 2/2 is not a great rate, but you give it haste, so it makes up for it. You can usually play this in the early game, and he can at least attack the first turn he comes down. You can play him on a turn where your opponent misses their 3-drop or something, and you can get in there. If you can get him to get one little guy, great. If you can get him to get 2 little guys, you're probably gonna start running away with the game. It's pretty good. You're gonna pick him pretty high. He's no bomb, and you know, sometimes you're not gonna take him, but most of the time you're gonna pick him pretty high. First pick a lot of times. B.
Don't get me wrong, I think he's cool. I think he's too slow.
Yeah. Next up, we have Rock Slide Sorcerer. For 3 and a red, you get a 3/3 human wizard at uncommon. Whenever you cast an instant, sorcery, or wizard spell, Rock Slide Sorcerer deals 1 damage to any target.
Holy crap, this is a good card. Holy crap, this card's going to see a lot of play. Holy crap, this is an A tier card.
Nice.
But no. The fact that it's instant, sorcery, or wizard lets this card fit into a lot of decks that care about those things. It's going to go in the wizard deck. It's going to go into the spells decks. You can get this guy to get like 1 trigger. He pays for himself. Any more than that, and it's just gravy. You know, because I don't know. I think this guy's really good. I think he's an A tier card. I think he's going to see a shit ton of play.
And in limited, a 4-mana 3/3 is a decent rate, and you tack on a great ability like this, and you're really in business. This is something you're going to be playing as many as you can get of in the blue-red spells and wizards deck. Play the heck out of it. Cast your instant sorceries and wizard spells and start killing anything. You can kill your opponent. You can kill their creatures. You can kill their planeswalkers. It doesn't matter. Kill all the things.
Spoken like a true red mage.
Yeah, you're gonna be first picking this a lot of the time, I think. Especially in packs 2 or 3, or in a pack 1 with a weak rare. This is where it's at, dude. This is a B.
We've got Royal Eruption coming up next with 1 and a red for a common sorcery with kicker 5. Royal Eruption deals 3 damage to any target. If the spell was kicked, it deals 5 damage instead. It's not good enough in any way, shape, or form, I don't think. The fact that it can hit any target makes it slightly better. I don't know. I don't think this sees a whole bunch of play. It might see play just because it's 2 mana for 3 damage, and sometimes you get to deal 5 damage for an absurd 7 mana.
Yeah, a little pricey for standard.
It's very pricey for standard, but I still think there are some crazy guys that are gonna try to put this into a burn deck. So I'll give it a D tier. I really just don't like this card. So.
And in limited, 2 mana to deal 3 damage is premium removal in red. It's really, really good. Even at sorcery speed, it doesn't matter. The fact that this can hit your opponent in the face is really good. Red hasn't seen a spell like this at common that can hit the face in a long time. And the fact that in the late game, you can use it to deal 5 and take out a big threat or finish your opponent off is fine. I mean, you're going to get 7 mana a lot in this format. You want to play your lands for the landfall triggers. So, yeah, this is fantastic. Pick it highly and pick it often. B. Next up, we have Roiling Vortex. For 1 and a red, you get an enchantment at rare. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, Roiling Vortex deals 1 damage to them. Whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast that spell, Roiling Vortex deals 5 damage to that player. You can also pay a red and make your opponents unable to gain life for this turn.
A red utility enchantment. I think that's pretty good. I like it. I think that it's going to definitely speed up games for sure with that first ability. And then I don't know. I'm trying to think of whenever a player casts a spell if no mana was spent. What exactly that implies.
You can cast stuff from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. You may cast this from exile without paying its mana cost.
No.
Stuff like that. Effects like that.
Yeah, I know. But I'm trying to think of like where that's relevant in. I mean, this counters Ashiok. really
Yeah,
hard.
I think this is kind of a card that hints to things to come.
Oh, I do too. Like, I don't know. Bex.
We'll see.
Anyway, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm right,
I would love for them to reprint the packs, but
anyway,
topic for another day.
yeah. So I think this is a B tier card. I think it's gonna some greedy players are definitely gonna put it into their deck, and some smart ones too. You know, but most of the time, just greedy. I think so.
Yeah, and in limited, I don't think you're really playing this either. One damage to each player is fine. You don't, if you're an aggressive red deck, you don't care about taking the hit yourself, as long as it means your opponent is losing more. The fact that it prevents your opponent from gaining life in a turn is actually the only thing really holding this thing on. Uh, if the life gain deck is prevalent in draft, like if it's really good, and you're playing an aggressive red deck, you might want to main deck this, especially in a best of one format, like on NTG Arena or whatever, just in case. Most of the time, it's going to be a D, but if the life gain deck is prevalent, it might go up. But I'm going to start it at a D. You cut it most of the time.
All right. There it is. Scavenged Blade is coming up next. For 1 in a red, you get an artifact equipment at common with when Scavenged Blade enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. Equipped creature gets +2/+0. It's got an equipment cost of 2 in a red. Yeah, I don't think this sees any play in standard. A common equipment that only gives +2/+0 is pretty bad in standard when you have things like Ember Cleave that can cost 2 mana and for sometimes and gives double strike and things like that. So I think this is too slow. I think this is an F tier card.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's obviously pretty underwhelming. In limited, it's not that bad. 2 mana for +2/+0 is okay, and the fact that it sticks around forever is really what makes it better. Equipment is just better than auras naturally. You're not at the risk of getting 2 for 1. And there are some cards that care about equipment, and in those decks you'll play this, and in any aggressive deck you'll probably play this. At least the first copy of it. I mean, it's not very good, but it's not that bad either. You're probably gonna want a piece of equipment a lot of the time. I'm tempted. I'll go ahead and give it a C. I mean, I think you're playing the first copy of this most of the time. But don't get too excited. Next up is Scorch Rider. For 3 in a red, you get a 4/3 human warrior at common with kicker for 1 in a red. And when Scorch Rider enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, it gains haste until end of turn.
All right. So for 6 mana, you get a 4/3 with haste. I don't think this is good enough. I think you can play some Fly Dragons for 6 mana with haste. And I think they're better. It could see some fringe play in either of the creature types that it has. So I'll give it a D tier, but I'm not very impressed.
In limited, like most of the other cards with kicker, this is better than it appears. A 4 mana 4/3 is an okay rate, and I'll mention the fact that it's a warrior here because it doesn't have much else going on. It is important, and it's going to enable a lot of other decks. The fact that you can kick it in the late game to sneak in some damage is really good. You might even be able to sneak a win out with this card. I don't think it's anything to write home about, but I think you're pretty interested in playing the first copy of it, and it might make the deck if you need it in the 4-drop slot. I'll give it a C. Sure. Hello?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I did not realize I muted my mic, and I've been talking this entire time.
Ha! Now you have to actually edit this a little bit.
Ugh. Next up, we have Shatterskull Charger for 1 and 2 red. You have a 4/3 giant warrior creature at rare with kicker cost of 2. It has trample and haste. If Shatterskull Charger was kicked, it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. At the beginning of your end step, if Shatterskull Charger doesn't have a +1/+1 counter on it, return it to its owner's hand.
This card's really cool. I like the design.
I do too. I also think it's insane. A 3-mana 4/3 with trample and haste that protects itself from removal, basically. Pretty awesome. There's going to be a combo deck with this card as well, I think, just because you can move +1/+1 counters around in standard. I think this guy's awesome. I think he's an A-tier card. He's going to definitely see play, and he's probably going to make some really fun games happen.
Yeah, in limited, this guy's great. 3-mana 4/3 with trample and haste would already be good. Now you give him some extra stuff going on too, and it's pretty interesting. A lot of times with the kicker cards, you want to like their kicked version is their bonus version. I think here a lot of the times you want to be paying 5 mana for the 5/4 trample haste as often as you can get it done. But when your opponent has an empty board and you've got 3 mana laying around, sneaking in 4 damage is no joke for 3 mana. Or surprising like a 2/2 and just going in with your 4/3 that comes back, like that's some serious pressure. Shoot, man, this thing might even be a bomb by himself.
I think he is.
I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna give it an A. I think this card's really good.
I like it a lot. When it was spoiled, I was really excited about it.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun to play with. Next up, Shatterskull Minotaur. For 4 and red, you get a 5/4 Minotaur Warrior at uncommon. It says this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. It also has haste.
Wow. A party deck payoff in red. I think this is actually pretty good. Even at 6 mana. It's still good. It's not great, don't get me wrong. At 6 mana, it normally would do more things than just have haste, but it does have haste. And a lot of the time in the decks that these are made for, this thing's going to cost 4, this thing's going to cost 3, I like it. I think it's probably a solid B tier card. It's going to see some play, but I don't know that it's insane.
In limited, this card's quite good. 6 mana for a 5/4 with haste is okay. Not crazy good. 5 mana for a 5/4 with haste is pretty good. 4 mana for a 5/4 with haste, and we're getting a little silly. And I think it's going to be pretty easy to get 2 party members on board. So I think this will be a 4 mana 5/4 with haste more often than we're thinking it's going to be. Yeah, I think you're going to first pick this out of some weaker packs. As long as it's not up against premium removal, you should probably take this. It's pretty good. B.
Next, we have Sizzling Barrage. For 1 and a red, you have a common instant card with Sizzling Barrage deals 4 damage to target creature that block this turn. F. Oh, just F.
Yeah, not something you want to be playing in standard. And in draft, 2 mana for 4 damage is still good, but you have to wait for your opponent to block. So it runs. It's harder to make it happen. If you're on the back foot, this card does nothing. It's nothing. Don't get me wrong. If you're really aggressive, you probably want to still play this. But it's kind of a trap card. In limited, you see 2 mana deal 4, and you're like, eat it up. But don't just be wary of it. Only play it if you're an aggressive deck. Otherwise, it's a D. Next up, Skyclave Geopede. For 2 and a red, you get a 3/1 insect at uncommon with trample and landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, Skyclave Geopede gets +2/+2 until end of turn.
I think this is a cool card. I don't think this card is insane by any means. I think it's got a good landfall mechanic. Um, and for this stat line and the fact that it has trample makes it better than normal. I still think it's a C tier card, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
In limited, this card's great. If you can make this thing a 5/3 most turns, which you will be able to, a 3-mana 5/3 with trample is no joke. This fits great into the red-green landfall deck, which is right where you want it to be. The monsters of Zendikar, you know. Turn it sideways and win the game. I think this is good enough to first pick in some weaker packs, and I think if it goes unanswered, your opponent's going to have a real problem with it. It's a B.
Next, we have a Sneaking Guide for 1 mana. 1 red mana, you get a 1/1 with 2 and tap for target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. I don't.
Sabira does it better.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think this card sees any play. Budget decks will probably give it a look. I'd say this is a D tier card.
In limited, don't fall for it. You probably have better things to be doing. It's not horrible in the most aggressive decks, but we've seen things at common in red that do this for way cheaper. It's overcosted. That said, you might want to play it in your really aggressive decks, but even then, you probably got better shit to do. Cut it most of the time. It's a D.
Flavor text. I swear it's a shortcut.
Next up, you have Spitfire Lagak. Lagak? I don't know.
Lagak.
For three and a red, you get a 3/4 lizard at common with landfall. Spitfire Lagak deals 1 damage to each opponent.
This is a common landfall card with pretty good ability. I think it'll see some play, just because there might be a combo deck where you landfall a bunch in 1 turn and kill them with this card. Kill them with 2 or 3 of this card if you can, because red is literally access to unlimited amounts of mana. So yeah, I think it's gonna exist. I still don't think this is a great, fantastic card. I think it's probably a low C, high D tier card.
In limited, this card's fine. A 4-mana 3/4 is good, and in a deck that has, makes use of the landfall triggers, it's gonna hit your opponents a few times, and it's gonna gum up the ground. I think you're pretty interested in playing this card. Not gonna run away with games or anything, but solid C.
Yeah, I like the parallels there.
Yeah.
We've got a Synchronized Spellcraft at 4 in a red. You get a common instant with Synchronized Spellcraft deals 4 damage to target creature and X damage to that creature's controller, where X is the number of creatures in your party.
This card's pretty cool.
Yeah, but it also always costs 5 mana.
It's overcosted.
For sure. I like the flavor of this card. I like that, and I think it's very thematic with the set. It makes sense, I guess. But I think it's too expensive, and I think dealing 5 mana, 5 damage for 4 to a creature and 1 damage to the creature's controller is still not very good. You need 2 or 3, optimally 4, for this card to really be worth the amount of mana you're spending on it. I think this is a D tier card. I won't give it F because somebody's gonna play it, I guess.
In limited, this is still removal, and it's pretty decent removal. 5 mana to deal 4 is going to take care of just about anything you need it to take care of, aside from the biggest threats. And getting a little extra damage to your opponent's face ain't no joke. Instant speed makes it a little bit better, as if you can get this to deal 2 to your opponent's face, you're doing pretty good. I don't know that you are. I don't know if this is premium removal or not. 5 mana for 4 damage seems a little low to me. I think we want it to do 5. it's almost premium removal. It's almost first pickable, but it's probably not. You probably want to take it somewhere around the middle of the pack. C. Next up, we have Teeter Peak Ambusher. For 1 and a red, you get a 1/3 Goblin Warrior at common. With 2 and a red, Teeter Peak Ambusher gets +2/+0 until end of turn.
This card is clearly not made for standard. It's an F tier card.
Yep, easy peasy. In limited, it's okay. You get a 2 mana 1/3 that eventually later can trade up, and that's okay. It kind of wants to be aggressive, but you have to invest too much mana into it for it to be aggressive. You probably got better stuff to do unless you're a defensive red deck for some reason. So then a 2 mana 1/3 is used. Whatever. Cut this most of the time. D. It's okay.
Next we have Thundering Rebuke. For 1 and a red, you get an uncommon sorcery spell that reads Thundering Rebuke deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. The Planeswalker definitely makes this card better. 2 mana for 4 damage is pretty good. I think it sees some play in like the Is It deck, and some weird mid-range board control-y, green deck, like a Gruul deck maybe. I think this card is definitely C tier.
In limited, this is great. This is premium removal. 2 mana, deal 4. It can kill Planeswalkers too. Pick it, play it, love it. Pick it highly. B. Next up, Thundering Spark Mage. For 3 and a red, you get a 2/2 human wizard at uncommon. When Thundering Spark Mage enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, where X is the number of creatures in your party.
So a 4 mana 2/2 that deals 1 damage, pretty bad. 4 mana 2/2 that deals 2 damage. That's you're getting in the range. 3 and up. This card is pretty good. The fact that it's not any target and it's creature or planeswalker does make it worse. So I think if we evaluate it at best cost, it's exactly the card before it, Thundering Rebuke, plus this card for 4 mana. That's the best case scenario, and I think it's worth 4 mana at that cost for a 2 mana 2/2 that does that. Yeah, I think this is a C tier card, possibly a D tier card, but we'll make it okay.
In limited, as long as you've got some party stuff going on, this is going to be fine. 4 mana for a 2/2 that deals 1 is meh, but there are some X1s running around. It'll kill stuff sometimes. But 4 mana for a 2/2 that deals 2 or more in limited is really good. It's not quite premium removal. It requires a little bit of setup, but I think you'll get there more often than you don't. You're probably not cutting this. C.
Oh, almost there. Anyway, go ahead. Oh, it's my turn. Yes, so next up is Tormenting Voice. We have 1 in red for a common sorcery that says, as an additional cost to this spell, discard a card and draw 2 cards. I think that this might see some play, but I don't think it's going to see very much if it does.
Well, you got to think about it this way. Thrill of Possibility exists, and it's instant speed and does the exact same thing.
Yeah. So I don't think, like I said, I don't think it's going to see too much play. This is a D tier card.
In limited, I mean, this is still card advantage, right? Like you're discarding your lands, which you generally don't want, and you're drawing 2 new cards. However, in this set, lands tend to be pretty useful. These landfall triggers are no joke. Giving all your team like +2/+2 and stuff is really good. So I think this card is worse than it usually is. Usually a card like this is a C where you want to play it as a top end. But I think here most of the time it's a D in every deck except the Wizards, Instants, and Sorceries deck, the blue-red thing that really wants to be drawing cards and casting sorceries and stuff. Then it goes up to a C, but most of the time it's a D. Next up is Tuk Tuk Rubble Fort. For 2 and a red, you get a 0/3 wall at common with Defender, Reach, and creatures you control have haste.
I actually really like this card. I think people are going to do some fun things with this card. I don't think that this card. I don't think it's make an aggro deck around this card, but I think that it's gonna be some fun things going on with it. So I think this is a C tier card. Okay, I'll reevaluate to a D actually. I'll say this is a D tier card just because it's gonna have some pretty cool combo stuff. I don't think you play this in every red deck. I don't think you try to play this in any of them, even though it has a huge upside. Yeah, I think D's fair.
In limited, we've seen a lot of these 3-mana 0/3 defenders that have additional things that they do for the rest of your team. This one's pretty good, especially if you can start playing, 4-mana bombs, 5-mana bombs, and big stuff coming down with haste is usually a big deal. And a 0/3 comes off the board well enough. I've seen my fair share of these cards actually get used to a point to where I don't want to give it a straight up F, but I think you've got to be playing a pretty particular deck and not have better 3-drops. So it's a D.
Next up, we have Valakut Exploration. For 2 and a red, you get a rare enchantment with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. And at the beginning of your end step, if there are cards exiled with Valakut Exploration, put them into their owner's graveyard. Then Valakut Exploration deals that much damage to each opponent.
This card's really cool.
It is a very cool card. So whenever you have a land enter the battlefield, you can exile a card. You can always play the card, or you can just leave it in exile and it now is a burn spell. This card is definitely going to see play. It's definitely has a huge upside. It's a pretty unique effect, actually. I like it a lot. I think this is probably a B tier card, maybe even a low A tier card, just because people are going to go crazy making awesome, cool combo decks with this.
Yeah, and worth noting is that the card you exiled that is now burning your opponent goes into your graveyard at the end.
Yep.
So you can get that back sometimes. So you can really craft your deck to take advantage of that. And in limited, this is just basically red card advantage, which red oftentimes doesn't get too much of, or if it does, you have to discard cards. And this is exactly what you're looking for. You're going to be picking this pretty highly in just about any red deck. It's a B, easy.
You just Valakut Exploration and the rest of your deck is just like 6-drop spells. Just giant cards, and you just deal 6 damage to their face, unblockable every single turn.
It doesn't deal damage equal to the card's converted mana cost.
Oh,
it deals damage equal to the number of cards that you're
yeah, that's true. I'm sorry. I misunderstood that. I even read the card. Sorry, but still. It's still pretty cool.
Yeah, it's still really good. If you can get multiple landfall triggers, you can deal a lot of damage with it, especially in combination with some of the green cards that let you get multiple lands. Yeah, anywho. Last card here. Wayward Guide Beast. For a single red mana, you get a 2/2 beast at rare with trample and haste. Whenever Wayward Guide Beast deals damage to a player, combat damage, sorry, return a land you control to its owner's hand.
A 1-mana 2/2 with trample and haste that doesn't actually have a downside?
I mean, that downside's real. If you play this on turn 1 and hit your opponent, you only have 1 mana instead of 2 mana on the next turn.
Yeah, so you don't play this on turn 1.
That's when it's the best, though.
Yeah.
Right? Because yeah, there's...
But having Wayward Guide Beast followed up by Wayward Guide Beast, followed up by Wayward Guide Beast.
Oh, don't get me wrong. In Standard, you can crush people with this thing.
I think that because... I don't think that's a downside. I really don't. I think that people are gonna be smart about how they play this card. Yeah, you want to play it on turn 1, but sometimes you save it. Play it later in the game, and it does cool things. I think that this is a 1-mana 2/2 with trample and haste, and that should be considered above all the other things. So I think this is an A tier card.
Yeah, yeah. In standard, this is going to be insane, and I think people who draft are going to fall into that trap of, oh my god, it's amazing in constructed, it must be great in limited. And the answer to that is sadly no. It's going to be fine in limited. A 1-mana 2/2 trample haste is bonkers, but that downside is super real. It's really easy for a 2/2 to just become useless later on in the game. When your opponents get 3/3s and 3/4s and 4/4s in play, this thing doesn't do anything. And if you play it on turn 1, that tempo you lose in limited is huge. Unless your deck is all 1-drops, that's going to be catastrophically bad. Now, I've said some bad stuff, but there's some good stuff going on too. In the late game, this triggers your landfalls again if it manages to connect. That's great. That's amazing. And it's a 1-mana 2/2 with trample and haste. That's still really, really good. I just don't. I want to just be warned. It's not broken. In limited, be careful. You're still going to pick it pretty high, but take your premium removal spells over this guy, and I think you'll be happier. I'm going to give it a C. Just be careful with it. I'm hype about it too, and I want to play it in all my limited decks, but be careful. Obviously, my favorite red card is the fucking dragon.
Oh, the Leyline Tyrant?
Leyline Tyrant.
That is, yeah, that card is insane. I was going to say the same thing, like, holy crap.
Yeah.
You mean... Yeah. I don't even know, man. Like,
it's gross.
It's
disgusting.
It's insane. So good. And people in Historic are, like, wetting themselves right now. A lot of cool cards, though. Overall power level, in my opinion, is pretty middle of the pack. They have some insane bombs.
For sure.
Yeah, like Leyline Tyrant and Morag, like what? And here he's lethal forming. Actually, I think that this card is going to see some pretty cool combo decks. I'm kind of excited about these 3 right here.
Shatterskull Charger's pretty good.
Yep. Doing some pretty cool stuff. That's for sure. I'm excited to see what they come. Give us a like, comment, subscribe.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out till the end.
Yeah, we
what's
appreciate
your favorite
it.
Red card?
Let us know in the comments below, please. Give us some feedback. Josiah, you're too loud. Craig, you're not loud enough. You both
Craig,
smell
you're an
bad.
obnoxious piece of shit, and you don't know anything about limited.
Yeah.
First off, you're lying, but
whatever.
If that's how you feel.
That's personally how I feel. But anyway, yeah, let us know in the comments below. We will work on our formatting things for next set. It'll be better, but we're gonna stick with this one for now, just because it's what we know.
It's what we got. It's what we got.
It's what it is. Appreciate
thanks for tuning in, guys.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.